to order a special meeting of the Springfield Township Board of Trustees. It is March 31st, 2020 at approximately 10 o'clock a.m. Mr. Burning, could we please have the roll call?
Yes, Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Burning?
Present.
Mr. Honolo?
Present.
All the trustees are present.
The first thing I would like to say, this is sort of an historic meeting to the sense that pursuant to Ohio law, we're having this meeting without the general public being in attendance. The meeting is being broadcast through Waycross Media. The research I did, it looks like Ohio adopted the sunshine laws back in 1975, and so this will be the first time in 50 years that I would know of that we've had a meeting in Springfield Township without the public being present. With that, though, could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And also, at Christie's suggestion, could we have a moment of silence for the Springdale police officer who tragically lost her life here recently? Thank you, everyone. Next, this meeting was called to address a number of issues that are related to the coronavirus pandemic, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gilbert, our Township Administrator, who's going to go through some of the policies and actions that we need to take here at Springfield Township to be in compliance with state and federal law.
Thank you, Mr. Honolo. As the board is aware, since this started several weeks ago, we as staff and as an organization understood that it's going to provide some complexities, I guess you would say, in terms of how we handle certain personnel issues related to exposures to the coronavirus, in particular with our medic staff. And we understand that they're going to be put in a situation on a daily basis that would create a possible exposure for them. So we had to come up with policies that we felt would protect our staff, not only the staff that are out in the field potentially being exposed, but the staff that actually was not, and how do we protect them from additional exposures as well. So we started to look at our existing policies to determine what would we need to do in this situation that would allow us to do that very thing. So prior to this meeting, the board has received copies of various directives and memos that I have issued to staff indicating how we are going to directly utilize our existing policies and those interpretations to prevent staff from unnecessary exposures. That has seemed to work fairly well. Staff has been very receptive to what we've done in terms of if we had someone that had to be quarantined by the Department of Public Health, or whether or not we as an organization required an employee to go home because they are exhibiting symptoms and we didn't want to risk exposure to an entire staff here at the firehouse or at the police department or public works or anywhere, frankly. So we've been doing that for several weeks. So one of the action items on the agenda today would be simply to ratify those policy interpretations and directives that have been issued by me over the past week and a half. Additionally, what you'll see on the agenda are policies that we have revised within our current personnel policy to comply with the recently enacted Family First Coronavirus Act, which expanded FMLA benefits and sick leave benefits. One thing that's, I believe, notable in there, that it does exempt out first responders and public works employees from the provisions of those two expanded policies. However, we feel like in order to provide an incentive for our employees to stay home if they're not well, to stay home if they have someone in their home is not well, to prevent them from coming to work unnecessarily and exposing our broader workforce, that we are extending the ability of the sick leave, expanded sick leave benefits to those that the federal government would allow us to exempt. We also feel like another reason for that is just because the public works, police, and fire could federally speaking be exempt from those policies and our other employees are not and are afforded that ability, we feel like we should at least afford that ability to those individuals we have working on the front lines dealing directly with this pandemic. I think we've done it in a way that benefits both the employee, but more importantly, benefits this organization to provide an ability and a benefit for those employees to stay home and not, again, expose our entire workforce to this virus, to deplete that workforce, and then in turn not allow us to continue to provide service to this community. So it was a very calculated decision as to why we decided to not exempt them from certain provisions of the sick leave benefits, but instead allow those benefits so that we can protect this workforce and continue to provide service to this community. What you'll also see on there are revisions to our home duty policy and our communicable disease policy to reflect the situation that we're dealing with right now with this virus. As the board is aware, I have placed most of our administrative staff on home duty, so I had to revise the home duty policy to reflect the nature of work that they're conducting remotely. Again, that was done because unlike any other department in the township, the administrative department works very closely and within one office environment, and then to prevent unnecessary exposures and to provide continuity of service to this community, we decided to allow some of those employees to work remotely, and they can. We have the technology in place. Their job functions are as such that it allows them to continue uninterrupted the service that they provide to this community, and they can do that remotely. So we've been doing that now for a week, and that will continue until further notice. Lastly, what I will say is, as a community, this staff has stepped up. In particular, our safety service personnel has stepped up and are continuing to provide uninterrupted service to the township. They're doing it with the understanding that there is a risk to them and potentially their families for what they can bring back to them. We are taking every precaution. I want the public and the board to know that we do have equipment. We're doing fairly well with safety equipment, with PPEs or personal protective equipment, masks, and different things. We do have an adequate supply at this point. Our run volume is as such that we feel like we're in a good position right now with equipment. For a couple of reasons. One, our staff has been extraordinarily proactive in going out and securing equipment so that we are not in a situation where we're in jeopardy of not having enough. Two, we've received donations from various sources. I know there's others, but I do know of one of Dr. Khan over here at the corner of Fleming and Winton who did provide some masks to the fire department, so we're very grateful and thankful for that. I know there are others, and I apologize for not mentioning them by name. So we are, I believe, in a good position right now. Our staff, while there is some angst and there is some worry, they are in good spirits and high morale and are continuing to provide service to this community. So we, at this point in time, I think I can with certainty say that we have no one on our staff that has a confirmed case of COVID-19. Simply because we don't have a positive test. So can I say that we've tested everyone that's came back negative? No. But I can tell you that We don't have anyone that is exhibiting symptoms that has been tested positive for it. And frankly, I don't have anyone right now that's exhibiting symptoms that I'm aware of. So we are in a good position to continue to provide service to this community. And I think it was important to just note that we have the equipment necessary to do that. We've had several questions asked on social media relative to that very issue, so I wanted to make sure that we addressed it today. Lastly, what you'll see on the agenda is a declaration of emergency. I know some communities have done this previously, and frankly, it's our opinion, while it's not required by law, which is why we haven't done it to date, we've as I mentioned, put in place policies and directives outside of that declaration of emergency, because I think this board gives its staff great latitude to do what we think is necessary to continue operations and protect this workforce. And we've done that, and I think the board is aware, obviously, that you've seen copies of those directives, and I've been in contact with you, so that hasn't been done completely unilaterally. But in the spirit of what we're dealing with, we feel like the declaration of the emergency resolution here on the agenda today is important, primarily because of the federal emergency declaration that was put in place and the possible ability for us to be reimbursed from FEMA for some of our expenses related to our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, I don't believe that we have many expenses to be reimbursed for necessarily. We aren't experiencing any mandated overtime or any large-scale purchases that would necessarily necessitate a reimbursement. However, I think it is important to know that the expanded sick leave policies and things that are in place do require us to provide certain benefits to employees outside of the typical PTO time that they're afforded. So there may be some additional expenses down the road. I don't anticipate there to be any, but putting this in place would allow us to do that. Additionally, we're not entirely sure what the ramifications of the economics of this pandemic will be for this community. We do not know how it will affect our revenues. We do not know at this point in time what our budgets will look like toward the end of this year or into the future. Just like the messaging that this board had put out, though, to the community, we are taking steps internally to look at our budget and look at our priorities in terms of what our expenditures are, and all unnecessary, that's probably the wrong word because I feel like all of our expenditures are necessary, but non-emergency related expenditures is a better way to put it, has been put on hold. Anything that isn't a current project that's under contract or an expenditure that is absolutely necessary is not being pursued at this time. So we're doing everything we can to anticipate that there will be obviously a downturn in the economy, and how that will affect our bottom line in terms of revenues for the rest of this year and next, I think is unknown. Undoubtedly, it will impact it at some level. So we're trying to put things in place now to be able to ride that out and continue to provide services to this community. So
we won't really know until next year exactly.
Exactly. So we have to make sure that we have reserves in place to continue operations, which is what we're doing. And declaring this emergency potentially will allow us to receive some reimbursements if there are any, or some of the stimulus funding that was put out that will allow us to shoulder some of that brunt of economic impact that we may see later this year. So,
Plus, we don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of months.
we have no idea.
So,
Undoubtedly, I think for us, the impact will be less than maybe some other communities because we are a bedroom community. So we don't have a lot of businesses that are shutting down. Obviously, we have some as a retail, primarily retail sort of based commercial economy here in the township. We do have some of those, and we do know that there's a struggle for some of our businesses, so I don't want to downplay that. But unlike a lot of communities that depend heavily on industry for revenue, we simply don't have the industry here that will impact us as great as some others. So there is a silver lining to being a bedroom community, which is we're able to weather a little bit of those storms more than others. However, there will be an impact, and we know that those revenues that come from our commercial businesses and through our joint economic development zone has provided us a great ability to impact our infrastructure needs.
The other good thing is we don't have thousands of people coming into the township to work every day and then
Correct.
going back to
Correct.
other communities and having the opportunity to get
Sure.
COVID-19.
Which is exactly why our run volume for those type of runs has not been that great up until now. So I do know that some of the projects that we put on hold are mainly infrastructure-related projects. And that's simply because we have to ensure that we have funds in place operationally, that if we have to supplement our police and fire departments going forward, that we can do that so we can continue to provide that uninterrupted service to this community. So not decisions that anyone likes to make. Obviously, we're in a better position than, say, the city of Cincinnati, which just furloughed 1,700 employees. So we're not there, and we're doing everything we can with our budget to prevent us from getting there, because that 1,700 employees simply means service to the people that live in the city of Cincinnati. And we do not want to be in a position to where we have to lay off employees, because that means less service to our residents. So we're doing everything we can to prevent that from happening, which is why we're closely looking at our expenditures and our budget to put us in a good position to weather this storm going into the future. So that is all I have really on the agenda for today, and that concludes my report, unless there are any questions of the board.
So, Mr. Gilbert, you're seeking a motion approving the personnel policies related to COVID-19, including the expanded sick leave policy, the expanded FMLA policy, the home duty policy, and the communicable disease policy, correct?
I am, and then I'm also seeking a separate motion to ratify and approve the interpretation of current township personnel policies related to COVID-19 outlined in my previous memos and directives to staff.
Okay. Thank you. With that, do we have a motion to approve the personnel policies related to COVID-19?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And next, do we have a motion to approve the interpretation of current township personnel policies related to COVID-19?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then on our agenda, we have two resolutions today. The first one is Resolution Number 34, 2020, declaring nuisances pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 505.87 at various listed properties within Springfield Township, and authorizing statutory actions necessary to abate the nuisances. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Mr. Honolo? Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 35, 2020, as previously discussed, declaring a state of emergency in Springfield Township. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Mr. Honolo?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Do we have any further business before the board today? Anything?
I do not. I'd just like to thank our residents for hopefully doing what the governor's asked and staying home. And I know we're all crawling the walls a little bit, but I think, the slowing of the cases proves that if people just stay at home and don't have a lot of social contact, that things will be a lot better sooner.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Mr. Burning. This is something we just got to kind of all pull together and as a nation, and we'll get through it. With that, then, do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.